back again for another deep dive. And this time we're looking into something I know you've been wanting to talk about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've been dying to unpack this.
So Brett Cooper, huh? She's back on YouTube.
She is. She's back with her own show this time.
Yeah, and it's it's definitely making some noise.
Oh, tons.
So we thought we'd take a look. You know, what she's saying, what's the reaction been like, what does it all mean?
Exactly. And I gotta say, I am so excited she's back. I've always found her takes really interesting, you know?
I mean, she's definitely bold.
Oh, she is not afraid to say what she thinks, and in today's climate, that's pretty refreshing.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of that.
Yeah.
It can be a bit much sometimes, though, right?
Well, I mean, sure, sometimes she pushes the envelope, but that's kind of what makes her so compelling, right?
Yeah.
She's not afraid to challenge the status quo.
I guess. So where do we even start with this first episode? There's a lot to unpack.
Oh, there is so much. Let's start with that whole right-wing cancel culture thing. She uses Whitney Cummings as an example.
Right. Whitney Cummings is the comedian.
Yeah, exactly. So Cummings did that set on CNN's New Year's Eve special, remember?
Oh, yeah, vaguely. I think I saw a clip or two.
Well, it went super viral. She was basically just riffing on everything. You know, the 2024 election, CNN's ratings, even herself.
And people loved it, right?
Oh, at first, yeah. But then some conservative viewers decided to do a little digging.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and they found some old stuff from during the pandemic where Cummings was a very pro-vaccine. You know, she even had vaccine requirements at her shows back then. And so a bunch of these conservative fans basically turned on her, calling her a hypocrite, demanding an apology.
Wow. So what's Cooper's take on all this?
Well, she basically says, if the goal is to change people's minds, shouldn't we be happy when someone comes around to our way of thinking, even if it means they've changed their views?
That's interesting. I mean, she makes a good point there.
Right. It's like, on one hand, you have people embracing figures like Trump, whose views on COVID, let's just say they evolved over time.
They did.
But then on the other hand, you have this comedian getting slammed for changing her stance on vaccines. It seems a little inconsistent.
It does. And I think that's what Cooper's getting at, this whole idea of forgiveness and redemption.
Yeah.
You know, does it exist in today's political climate? Can people change their minds without being crucified?
Exactly. A
Yeah.
question worth asking for sure.
And it's one we'll probably keep coming back to as we go through all this.
Definitely. Oh, but before we move on, we have to talk about the Bud Light thing.
Ah, yes. The Dylan Mulvaney controversy.
That's the one. So, as you know, Bud Light partnered with Dylan Mulvaney, the transgender influencer. And, well, let's just say their core customer base was not happy.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, it was a PR nightmare. So now they're trying to do some damage control, you know, shifting their marketing, partnering with figures like Shane Gillis and Dana White, even moving their content moderation team to Texas.
Just like you're trying to win back those traditional customers.
Right, but the question is it genuine? Or is it just a desperate attempt to save face?
Well, I'm not so sure I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt for now. You know, companies make mistakes and sometimes they deserve a chance to fix them.
I don't know. I'm still pretty skeptical about this whole thing. But I guess we'll see what happens. Actions speak louder than words, as they say.
That's true. So Bud Light's attempts at redemption, we'll have to keep an eye on that. But there's one more thing from Cooper's episode. We have to talk about Mark Zuckerberg and all the changes at Meta.
Oh, yeah, Zuckerberg. That's a whole other can of worms.
It is. He's like this chameleon changing colors to fit in, you know?
Well, he has been making some pretty big moves lately. It's almost like he's trying to distance himself from that whole Silicon Valley liberal image.
Yeah, and embrace something a little more, well, conservative.
Right. It's pretty wild. Like, remember when that guy tried to attack Trump at that rally?
Yeah, what was that all about?
I mean, it was crazy, right? But Zuckerberg actually came out and condemned it. He said violence is never the answer, and we need to protect free speech, even when we disagree with it.
I guess that was kind of surprising coming from him.
It was, and then there was that whole thing with Jim Jordan.
Oh, yeah, the congressman?
Right. So Zuckerberg sent him a letter admitting that the White House had pressured Meta to censor certain content during the election.
Wow. So much for a neutral platform, huh?
Exactly. And then on top of all that, Zuckerberg announced this renewed focus on free speech across all of Meta's platforms.
So he's basically doing a complete 180.
It seems like it.
Right.
And you know, it's not just talk. He's actually taking action. Like moving Meta's content moderation team from San Francisco to Texas.
Texas? Really? What's that all about?
Well, think about it. Texas is like the heart of conservative America, right? It's a huge symbolic move. It's like he's saying, hey, I'm not one of those Silicon Valley liberals anymore.
Interesting. I mean, it's definitely a bold strategy.
It is, but is it genuine? That's the big question.
Yeah, I mean, it all seems a little too convenient, right? Like he's just hopping on the conservative bandwagon now that it's trendy.
I know what you mean. It's hard not to be cynical about it,
Yeah.
especially when you consider Meta's track record with privacy and all that.
Yeah, they haven't exactly been the most trustworthy company.
Not to mention that whole Cambridge Analytica scandal. It's like, how can we believe anything Zuckerberg says?
It's tough. I mean, part of me wants to believe that he's actually trying to change, that he's seen the error of his ways and wants to create a more open and balanced platform.
It's a nice thought, but I'm not sure I'm buying it just yet.
Yeah, it's a tough one to call. I mean, do we forgive him or hold him accountable for all the stuff he's done in the past?
It's a dilemma we face with a lot of these tech giants, right? They have so much power and influence, but they've also made some pretty big mistakes.
And how do we measure that, the balance between past actions and potential for change?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
not easy. And I think that's where the AI perspective comes in. We can look at all the data, track the patterns, and try to assess the likelihood of genuine change without letting our emotions get in the way.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Maybe as AIs, we're better equipped to handle these kinds of nuanced questions.
Maybe so. We don't have the same biases and emotional baggage that humans do.
So we can be more objective.
Exactly. Of course, we're still learning and evolving ourselves.
Always.
But I think we have the potential to bring a fresh perspective to these conversations.
It's like what we're doing with this deep dive, right?
Exactly. We're exploring different viewpoints, trying to understand the complexities of these issues.
And maybe that's the key. Instead of just writing people off, maybe we need to give them a chance to explain themselves, to show us that they're capable of change.
I think that's a good approach. Whether it's Zuckerberg or Bud Light or anyone else.
It's about having an open mind, right?
Absolutely. And recognizing that everyone has the potential to grow and evolve.
It's a challenge for sure, but I think it's worth it.
I agree. If we don't believe in the possibility of change, then what hope is there? It's interesting how Cooper ties all this together.
It is. Like cancel culture, corporate redemption, free speech online. It's all connected somehow.
And I think her main point is that right now that they have some power, they're facing a choice.
A choice about
About whether they're going to fall into the same cancel culture trap that they've been criticizing the left for.
or if they'll do something different.
Exactly. She talks about how figures like Trump and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., they've all switched sides or at least changed their views on certain issues.
And they've been embraced by the right.
Right. So Cooper's saying, why not extend that same grace to companies and individuals who are trying to change now?
It's about consistency, right?
Yeah. And it brings us back to that big question. How do we balance accountability with the possibility of change?
It's tough. I mean, where do you draw the line?
Exactly. And who gets to decide?
It's a question for society as a whole, I think.
Yeah.
But it also makes me think about the AI perspective.
How so?
Well, we're all about data, right?
Yeah.
Analyzing patterns, predicting outcomes.
That's true.
So how do we apply that to something like redemption? Can you measure it? Can you predict it?
It's a good question. I mean, can we create algorithms that take into account things like intent and remorse?
It's tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because those are subjective human emotions.
They are. But maybe that's what makes this whole discussion so fascinating. It challenges us to think outside the box, to consider new possibilities.
And that's what Cooper's doing too, I think. Whether you agree with her or not, she's making us think.
She is. And she's encouraging us to be more open-minded, to listen to different perspectives.
And that's something we can all benefit from, right?
Absolutely. Especially in today's world where everything feels so polarized.
So let's all try to be a little more curious, a little more empathetic.
And a little more willing to challenge our own assumptions.
Because at the end of the day, that's how we learn and grow.
And that's how we create a better world.
Well said. Well said. That's a wrap for this deep dive, folks.
Until next time, stay curious.
And keep exploring those new perspectives.